So, on today's episode, we have Edward Young, a good friend of mine. Um, Eddie, thank you very much for coming on. We're really pleased to have you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, so we'd like to talk today about your career as an artist and an entrepreneur. You know, where you began, where you are now, and where you see yourself headed. So, I don't think there's any better place to start than at the beginning. Could you give us a bit of a rundown, maybe your education, how you grew up? What made you get into what you're doing today?
Sure. So I was born and raised in Suffolk County, Long Island. I live in Smithtown currently. I go to school in Los Angeles at Loyola Marymount University. And where I met Mark was in the in-between at Xavier High School in Lower Manhattan. And I grew up with a sister, Anna, my two parents who are both teachers. And in terms of my background, I feel like that's what really inspired me to where I am today. I'm not pursuing a teaching career, but I really grew to learn to love education and the fruits of what my professors had to say and what my teachers had to say. And I think that having two teachers growing up allowed me to kind of just get interested in different things, and that happened to be art in high school. So we'll get into that. But yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever feel any type of pressure from your parents to go into education at all?
I think my parents, from their own respective backgrounds, wanted something that was stable. And I think that teaching can be a stable career, especially in the public school system, because it allows for a pension and stuff like that. So I think that they really enjoy what they do. And as I've gotten older, I've started to realize that enjoying what you do is the most important thing. It's easy in these competitive schools that we go to kind of get trapped in this idea of money and the prestige. But it's at the end of the day, I think it's very important to kind of just really get up in the morning and enjoy what you do and continue to do so.
Absolutely. And your parents enjoyed or they mentioned the stability of the education career with pension you mentioned. So, how do you go from the safety that an education career might provide to what you're doing today? You know, being an artist is not at all stable. Um, Often I'd imagine you experience feelings of, fear, like how am I going to make a career? You know, there's so many artists, the field is so saturated. So how did you decide on how you wanted to go down to art?
I had one teacher. I was fortunate enough. I mean, some people see it as a negative, but I went to high school with my father. He was a teacher at Xavier, and he knew that the art department at Xavier was very strong, and that encouraged me. Although I had started off in music, I played the saxophone growing up, and that was one thing that I was interested in. He said, "Hey, give art a try. The teachers are very good." And so when I got to Xavier, although sports and academics in terms of like I was really into math and history and stuff like that, I really started to fall into art. And it wasn't until over COVID that I had the privilege of having Miss Yakovone, who was by far one of the most inspiring and impactful teachers I had. And she really was the one who flipped the switch for me and made me believe that I had a talent in art, I had a passion for art, and that not only that I could continue to do art beyond high school, but that I could make a career out of it. And she really opened my eyes to the possibilities of that future.
How did you discover your talent for art?
I would say that it didn't come instantly. I think most people are quick to denounce their artistic ability in whatever way, but I think that everyone has an artistic side to them. I think some people are just told they're not good at it, or they're too afraid to kind of bring that out of their background. But I think for me, I just kind of, especially during COVID with the isolation, I just kind of treated it as my own little hobby. And I really just wanted to, what inspired me was the ideas behind art and how I can convey thoughts and feelings and emotions. And that allowed me to kind of express something in not a literal sense, whereas like I was writing a paper and had to express an idea or series of thoughts, but more just on a canvas or digitally. And I think that that was a new way of expressing myself. And I think that Miss Yakovon saw that in me, and she saw that I had a desire to tell stories and kind of like a natural niche for it.
And do you have any particular stories that stood out to you in the classroom with Miss I? Is there any real turning points, or do you think it was a gradual?
It's funny, there actually is a big turning point. So when one we had one assignment where we were trying to experiment with hatching, and one thing that really got me into art was I actually have pretty shaky hands, so I tread now more in the digital realm, but initially most artists get started with a more fine arts background with drawing and sketching and painting. So on this one assignment, I was sketching using lines, and they call it hatching. And so I'm doing the cross hatching, and I just kind of like put on music and just got super in the zone with the cross hatching. And I began to realize like how therapeutic almost it was. And the idea that I was kind of conveying was this, it was like a brain that had a lock on it, these like metal chain links, and it was these fingers telling them like what to think, or kind of like trapping the thoughts behind the brain. And I remember just being like so into the idea behind it. And I think like for me, what really is inspiring about art is like the freedom of the idea, or the and I guess we kind of have talked about earlier, like with entrepreneurship, like that's what I feel like brings the two together, was like the creativity. And so in that assignment, I just tried to bring out like what I thought. And she was like, Eddie, this is not only is it a really good work of art, but you were also able to really dig deeper. And I think that once literally pulled me aside and we had a big discussion, and she was like, you have a talent that you really haven't cultivated. And I think if you take this seriously, you can really um, find something that can be very rewarding for you. And so I continue to work hard, and with her encouragement and kind of support, I was able to kind of make a artistic career, or at least the start of one.
Great. That's really. So you mentioned it was a brain with these sort of chain links that were fingers trying to trap your thoughts in, almost like judgmental fingers. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
How do you find inspiration for your artwork?
I think that it's for me, with the digital landscape today and with social media, it's a lot easier to kind of see things online, and oh, like whether people have Pinterest, and a lot of artists use Behance, which is kind of just like another form of social media for artists. For me, I just like to look at everyday things. I think I'm not necessarily from a super artistic background, and um, as we mentioned, like my artistic career started late, so I kind of think of things differently than most artists, and I see kind of a flip side to that. I think that my ability to see things from like a consumer standpoint inspires me to kind of bring that into the artistic realm, and kind of merge the two between like business and also art and design. And I think that for me, inspiration lies in those people who kind of bridge the gap. I look at the works of like Mark McQuaid and um, a lot of other digital artists, like this guy Cole, who I follow on Instagram. He does a lot of really cool digital works based on sports incidents that happen, whether it's a dunk on somebody, or a really big play or anything. And I think that those people today have really cool stories to tell, and their capturing of events or moments is kind of what inspires me to see kind of a career in art.
Amazing. What do you think was the itch that art scratched that music didn't?
I think initially it was so one thing I learned in college, especially going to Loyola Marymount, was with my friends who study film. It was I always thought of art as a platform for like I said earlier, like expressing ideas um, and stories. And I found myself when I got to college really wanting to tell stories for people who couldn't use their voice. And I think what music is an expression of feeling, whereas like art and design could be used to express like different thoughts and backgrounds of people and tools. And as I've gotten into photography in college, photos and photojournalism is one way that people really tend to tell stories. And that's something that really fascinates me that I feel like music did. And I think music is they support each other and they go hand in hand in the creative realm. But I didn't get that kind of same satisfaction from music. And I know you play piano and you have your fair share of music background, but I think it's just different for everybody.
Absolutely. I mean, you were talking about how a lot of people discredit themselves and their artistic abilities. It's something that maybe could be found if people gave put more time to it. And I would definitely say that I am not particularly artistic in the sense that you are. Um, but absolutely, there's many different avenues of people to explore their artistic abilities. And me personally, I find that in music. So it's just great to see that, there's people out there who find the exact same feelings, but in a slightly different media. It's really inspiring. I want to talk more about your interest in the intersection of the art and the business. You mentioned seeing art from a consumer perspective. Did you became interested in studying art in high school, but did you always know you wanted to study art properly in college?
No, I would say my friends growing up all kind of had their own different avenues that they wanted to pursue, and one activity that I was involved in, and one mentor I had was this teacher in high school named Michael Aprea, and he really inspired me about financial literacy and different ways that you can kind of take a small investment and turn it into something that can help you retire early. And for me, someone who came from a working class family, I really like wanted to take that seriously because I knew that in order to live the lifestyle that I wanted to and have creative freedom, I wanted to not be financially stressed. And I initially went into a lot of my college application process with the idea that I needed to make a lot of money really quick to pay off student loans and stuff like that. So I applied to half of my schools as an entrepreneurship major because I like the idea of creative thinking within business. And I thought that my interpersonal skills would allow me to kind of excel in that business world. Um, and so yeah, so I kind of see myself as a bridge between the two gaps, and that's why I wanted to study art in college. And I'm a graphic design major, um, but I wanted to kind of bridge the gap between design and the people who make the financial decisions in the room. And let's say you have a client who wants to create this ad campaign for their new brand. I want to be the guy who's able to kind of get those thoughts and ideas and put them into a illustrative or like a photograph, like like there's different ways to kind of express the different business ideas, and I think that that really interests me. And whether it's an ad agency or a different marketing agency, that's kind of what the future kind of is looking for me right now.
Got it. And did your future self who wanted to go into college studying entrepreneurship, did you see entrepreneurship as a sort of a get rich quick kind of strategy at the time?
I thought that with my knowledge of like startups and stuff like that, I thought that, and I mean, it's true. I've, as my network has expanded, I've heard different stories of, for example, one of my friends at school, his older brother, was an entrepreneur and got started with DoorDash and was one of their first 500 employees. And he took a lot of his raises in, as a part of the company's stock, and they allowed him to retire at 34. And I was really in love with that idea of this kind of like, okay, work really hard, and I have the ideas and I have the ability to talk to people, but I what I've now realized is how I can use that mindset of not necessarily get rich quick, but more use the ideas of like a business person within the art realm to kind of maybe possibly open up my own design agency with really focusing on stuff that I care about, like telling stories and creating media that moves people.
Great. We'll get to talking more about potentially the studio you want to open up in a little while, but I'd like to go back. You briefly mentioned how you were inspired. I believe it was Mark McQuaid, is that his name? Yeah, and posting artistic things about maybe someone getting dunked on, or anything else sports related.
That's this influencer named Cole. He works he's a freelance designer and he works with big brands like Adidas. He's partnered with them to do a lot of basically when their athletes get um big events, for example, like he does a lot of work with Messi and Anthony Edwards and a lot of their ad campaigns for their brands. So he kind of capitalizes on their moments and then he's the first one to post media about them and a lot of companies will use his stuff to kind of boost their own marketing and advertising around cities. But yeah, Mark
Okay.
McQuaid is he's a different designer who he's done a lot more political designs that you see. His work's been featured in like the New York Times, the New Yorker, et cetera, different news outlets. But he combines graphics with um, different stories and does a really cool job with it.
Okay. So across Cole and Mark, sports, politics, roughly. New York Times. Maybe it's not that simple, but do you have a particular direction that you would like to go? Would you like to follow in the footsteps of Cole doing the sports stuff or McQuaid more New York Times newspaper stuff? Do you have any idea of that direction that you want to go in just yet?
Sure. I mean, one of my professors currently at LMU, he went to Yale for design, both undergrad and grad school, and he's been a good resource. He a lot of the designers that I study, whether it's different designers from Europe, from Switzerland, like there's Swiss design and design from the Netherlands, like Dutch design. A lot of those artists really have transcended and inspired other younger artists and the media that we see today. And I think that their influence has allowed young designers to kind of pick and choose in their own industry. And for me, I think that as long as what matters for me is the people and the stories behind it. And I honestly see myself as an interdisciplinary person because I tend to get fascinated and love learning about different topics, regardless. I mean, I spend a lot of my free time watching sports, playing sports, but also learning about different conflicts going on in the world, learning about different stories that are going on around the world. I think it's important to kind of be cultured. And so I want to work in a realm that allows me to kind of express that culture and share that with people who might not necessarily experience it.
If you're enjoying the content so far, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button to stay up to date with any of our future notifications. So, could you tell me a little bit more about Professor Garland? What kind of influence has he had on you, and what classes of his have you taken?
Sure. So this semester I took a social design class with him, and I've also taken a 2D design class with Professor Garland. And what inspires me the most about him is his kind of background as being one of the first African American designers to really step in the room with some of the best designers in the world. And his upbringing in Chicago really inspired me to know that you didn't have to be from a lot of the artists in today's realm and designers come from a background of parents who are artists or they kind of knew people in the industry. And he kind of motivated me to use my talents, similar to like Miss Jacobone, and use my work ethic to kind of further my designs and my different artworks to kind of tell a story that mattered and that he really motivated me to kind of isolate and consolidate my thinking into something that instantly resonates with people and I think that that's great. I think that he's been one of the most impactful professors for me and I'm really excited because I'll get to have plenty of more classes with him. I'm going to be taking a uh, typography class with him, another social entrepreneurship where we'll get to design different projects of businesses. And yeah, he's a great professor who I'm really excited to continue to work with.
How, if at all, do you see the influence or persona characteristics of Miss I, a Cavone, in Professor Garland?
What I noticed and why I gravitated towards both of them was their language and the diction they used was always anything is possible. And I think that in the creative world, that's the biggest separator is people who tend to think robotically and think that the world is such a limiting factor versus the people who tell you that whatever you want to go and do is possible within your parameters of work ethic, um, and willingness to make sacrifices to make your dreams a reality. And I think that it's easy for people to say that, but once you are in the room with people who are in the design studio till 2 a.m., like myself on most projects, or in the library researching different books on different designers, um, I think that as long as you continue to believe so, and you kind of believe that uh, a life is possible in the design and creative world, then anything is possible. And I think that both of them allowed me to kind of believe in myself. And it's always nice when you have people in your corner to kind of back you and support you.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Eddie. I mean, I know what it's like to found the barracks, and it's certainly requires an immense amount of sacrifice to try to make your dreams a reality. Um, what are some concrete sacrifices that you think you've made to help secure your future as a artist?
I think that my parents and the discussion between the expense of college and the uncertainty of picking a career where a lot of my friends who are studying business can, whether it's finance or accounting, and they're securing internships that are almost guaranteeing them a position to start right out of college with a solid paycheck and benefits. I think that that kind of lit a fire under me to take this seriously, and I think that I've done the proper steps. Currently, I'm working on two freelance projects with my university. Professor Garland actually hired me to do the playbills and poster designs for the theater program at my school, and I'm also working remotely as a graphic designer for my athletics program, which I had a job during the school year. So I've really taken the steps and used my network at university to kind of um, build the future. And I'm in the midst of applying for two internship programs for the school year. Lucky enough, I'm going to study abroad in London, where I'll be interning at a design studio there. And those are kind of the different steps that I've taken to allow myself to really make my dreams a reality. Because I do understand the nature of today's climate, and that things are drastically getting more expensive. And in order to kind of have the life that I want to live and provide for my future family, that I'm going to need to be financially literate and free. And it's hard for my parents, from their background and working as teachers, to kind of see that in the creative realm. But it's more than possible. And if anything, at university, I've learned that um, my dreams definitely can become a reality with hard work and patience.
Absolutely. There's always the trade-off. So you mentioned some of your friends, they might be pursuing internships at finance firms. You know, there's two separate lives. It seems to me that that is a much more secure type of career trajectory, and there's always the trade-off. They, while they may receive a higher salary right out of college, might have a steady job. On the other hand, they may not have as much ownership over what they're working on. They may not enjoy it as much as someone who's working on their own projects. You, on the other hand, you get the benefit of having ownership over what you do. Your work is entirely dependent on your ability to produce unique material. But then on the other hand, you also experience these feelings of a little bit more fear, anxiety. What do you think it is that still inclines you to go the route that you're taking? Do you think that those who are taking a safer route with the finance, with what have they, what do you think they're missing that you currently enjoy?
I think that I've found a passion, and I don't show any disrespect to people who might necessarily take something that they feel might not be their passion, but will allow them to have a great career, a very successful and wealthy career. Because I think that in my realm, because I am so inspired to kind of tell stories and be able to create different forms of media that inspire other people, that's really what gets me out of bed in the morning, is like, how can I make the world not necessarily a better place through my actions, but also through what I create and create something that's lasting and resonates with people. That's what really inspires me. And I think that there's always a market for that. I think that people will always be receptive to kind of that. And as long as um, I continue to work and make other sacrifices to make that dream a reality, that a lot of the fears that I have will be alleviated because I've seen it firsthand in the creative industry how all it takes is one opportunity. I currently have two friends, one who took a leap of faith to work as a volunteer for the Survivor show on CBS, and now he's a producer. He just got promoted. And I have another friend who took a risk to go on tour with this upcoming artist, Tizo Touchdown, and he recently did the design work for his merchandise and marketing for his Instagram. And both of those friends have really inspired me to kind of take a leap of faith and take a chance because the reward for that kind of leap of faith is something that really inspires me and something that I want to have be a part of my future.
Hmm. And that leap of faith, I believe in today's day and age is becoming increasingly important considering that people are looking for meaning these days um, a lot more often. I'd like to also point out how, you mentioned it takes just one opportunity, just one thing needs to hit. As any seasoned entrepreneur knows, you know, those who are in it for the long haul, they have many projects that they're working on, many failures, many failures, way more failures than successes. However, it just takes one great success, maybe one big break in the artist industry, one big break in the tech industry, and then you're on your way. So, is that your North Star? How do you deal with the uncertainty of the career? Do you just pin that image, you know, above your bed frame? Maybe this one opportunity is going to hit within the next year, 5 years. What is your remedy to the uncertainty?
Well, what I've noticed is, and especially in my conversation with my parents, is to continue to make difficult decisions. When I first went to Xavier, it was a difficult decision because of the commute. When I first went to LMU, it was a difficult decision because I was moving across the country 2,000 miles away. Now I'm doing another opposite 2,000 miles away to London. And I think that what inspires me in terms of the creative industry is that kind of sense of, oh, this might definitely not work out. But if it does, and when it does, I'm a big believer in manifesting and allowing yourself to create a reality through repetition and through practice to kind of make whatever you're thinking in your head a reality. And I truly believe that putting yourself in a position to be with other people who may inspire you or who you surround yourself with who make you want to work harder. Those are the type of people that allow me to be my best version of myself, be my authentic self. And I think that that's something that in my future I'm excited to do. And I want to continue to take risks and put myself in positions where I'm in a studio with other really talented designers. And although I may feel like I'm an imposter, I'm allowed to grow as an individual and as an artist to one day be the person who isn't necessarily on the opposite side of that spectrum. And I know that it will come with time, but currently, I'm in the process of taking that leap with different opportunities. And so hopefully, I mean, through hard work and dedication, that will come true.
Let's talk a little bit more about that studio. When do you plan to execute? When and how? I don't know how much of this you've already fleshed out, but when and how do you plan on executing that goal of yours to start your own studio, have your own team, make your own products?
So, in a conversation I had with one of freshman year, I was in a portfolio making class for my major, and luckily now I'm in a position where I have my own website. I've been able to get some feedback from other people, from other designers and artists, and in that class we had alumni guest speakers come in, and there was one alum individual who had worked in the advertising industry. He had worked on big time ad campaigns for the Super Bowl. One of his ads was at one point the highest grossing ad of all time. He did a Volkswagen commercial with the famous Darth Vader dog sticking its tongue out the window and coming up to the doorstep, and it had been a huge success. And he had talked about how unhappy he was in that role and how this had been something that he had always looked forward to, and it allowed him to gain a sense of experience, but also let him know that this isn't something that I want to do for the rest of my life. And he ended up pivoting to creating his own studio, and now he works in a more niche category of dancing and other expression through movement. And his studio focuses on exactly what he likes. And his name's Josh Rose. He's a very successful designer and artist, and I kind of learned from him that in order to kind of create the lifestyle and work that motivates me and that inspires me, I kind of have to be in a realm where I can make the decisions. I can do the videography, I can do the designs, I can do the photography, and for whatever client that I truly believe in, because I think that that will allow me to kind of create my best work. And if I'm working with somebody who's a hardworking individual who has a story that I feel like deserves being told, um, I think I'd be willing to go above and beyond in my work. And that's really what inspires me.
So you'd say, is it a fair thing to say that you're most motivated by the ability to take real ownership for the work and make your own decisions, what projects you're going to work on? That's what motivates you to start the studio?
Yes, I think that when you have your own studio, although there comes issues with a lot of the business side of things, that's always kind of what excited me, as well as having my own LLC and being able to kind of take the steps to make my own decisions in terms of hiring and people that I work with and surround myself with. That definitely comes with challenges, but those challenges are far more rewarding when you allow yourself to work on projects that you really like and clients that you can say, hey, I don't want to work with you because of X, Y, and Z, but I can refer you to so and so. And otherwise, work with clients that really are fun to work with and are exciting and will meet you halfway. Because in the creative realm, that's a big issue is finding good people to work with. And from what I've heard from various alum from my university is the bigger the project, a lot no one will ever be happy. And I think that that's natural for life, but um, it's a grueling environment to work in, especially when you're in a creative realm, because you're not necessarily trying to please people, because good design is something that challenges people and challenges the way that they think. But you also want to be in a realm where you can kind of satisfy your client and do something that is meaningful and impactful.
Hmm. Now, to start to wrap up, I just have one final question. What do you think it is, if anything, that most people don't get right about art or don't understand? Any common misconception that you think should be set straight?
I think that one misconception that I touched upon briefly earlier was um, people think it's impossible to create. I think that even from the smallest interactions in your everyday life, people get very stressed out, they get very tense, they don't allow themselves to think freely and think creatively. And I think what it is exciting about entrepreneurship and about good design is that idea making, and that the ideation phase is what we call it. And I think that taking the steps to figure out what you want to do, how we're going to do it, uh, and making it a reality and dreaming big is all a part of that. And I think that the misconception is that that seems so outlandish, and people will tell you crazy for starting a podcast, and people will tell you crazy for your studying art and design, and that is what is a misconception, I think, nowadays. I think that if you truly believe in what you're doing, and you take the steps and the sacrifices to make that a reality, I think that um, it's really on the people who have the negative comments, who bring other people down, who prevent people from chasing their dreams. I think that that's the misconception today.
Amazing. Well, Eddie Young, I have to thank you very, very much. And I have to wish you the best of luck in your career. You know, you're a young guy, young artist in the field, taking a big risk, making big jumps. And here at the Barrax Podcast, we only wish you the best of luck going forwards. Thanks, Eddie, for coming on.
Of course, I'm looking forward to hopefully having an episode when I can come back and we're both in the midst of our successful careers and we'll have good stories to tell and look back on this and kind of build upon a good life for ourselves, Mark.
Absolutely. This is just the beginning. All right, Eddie.